Hello and welcome to Drinking from the Fire Hose and the third in our series of 10-minute videos. My name is Murray McMillan and I'm going to be co-presenting with Roger Wilcox, who you will see in a few minutes. This week we're focusing on maximising production. As always, we've got the 10-minute video, but at the end of this we'll post a link to the full version. So for those that want to dive a little bit deeper into the subject, there's the full-length version available as well. Now it's also worth pointing out that while we'll probably focus a fair bit on oil and gas through this presentation, the concept is relevant for all other sectors as well. So whether it's manufacturing or a service industry, the concept is exactly the same. So where you're looking to maximise your improvements and maximise performance, the exact same approach will work for you. So forgive the oil and gas stories throughout this one. So we're going to kick off, as always, with what's the goal and why? Why do we do this? So talking about the maximising production, this is really about ensuring the whole organisation is engaged in maximising production. And while that sounds quite obvious, I've worked in many places where it's not that clear that everybody's fully engaged in this, all key parts of the organisation. So really to maximise it, to develop a very powerful barrel chasing culture, it needs everybody to be involved and everybody to understand their part in the overall process. So that's the goal. The why is obviously to ensure production is fully optimized and maximized at all times. Again, sounds fairly obvious, but it's just really giving yourself confidence that that is happening every single day. So again, this barrel chasing culture is about really chasing every single barrel every single day. It's relentless, it's full on, and it's even small numbers of barrels. And that just takes me back very quickly to one of Roger's stories from an earlier presentation, where he was out with an operator at a well site, and this guy was tweaking pressures and gauges and all sorts of things just to eke out another few barrels. And while the story was about only a few barrels, for argument's sake, let's say added 10 barrels that day. Doesn't sound like a lot, but 10 barrels every day makes a big difference. A quick calculation, even at today's oil prices, that's north of $150,000. And that's just 10 additional barrels a day. And I've used this approach a number of times where, for all guys might struggle and say we're working as hard as we can, we're producing as much as we can. The challenge in there, could we get another few barrels? Is there any way we can eke out another 10? Almost always comes up with suggestions. And small incremental changes like that over the course of a year make a massive difference. Yeah. So that ties into, it maximizes revenue for the business. Are we producing as much as we can? Are the barrels going out the pipeline? Are we making as much as we've promised in our forecasts as well? So is all that coming through? And you've got the added benefit of reducing unplanned losses. If we're focused on production, if we're focused on how we're doing this, hopefully we're also reducing these unplanned losses. And that, you've all your hidden costs in there as well. Which is something I think we've touched on in our previous presentation, but you've got the hidden costs, you've got the manpower that you're using, you've got spare parts, you've got everything else that comes into that. So minimizing these unplanned losses is another big benefit. Yeah. So I'm actually going to hand over to Roger now for another few benefits for this approach.
Yeah, thanks very much, Murray. Yeah, those 10 barrels a day, it certainly adds up, doesn't it? I mean, it's absolutely huge what it can add up to in terms of monetary value. And there are ways of doing that, which we'll get onto in a minute. One of the things I think, why is this important about maximizing production as well? Also about reducing carbon emissions. We've heard that a lot in the news. I thought I'd just share something that I saw recently. Serica Energy, which are one of the newer operators in the North Sea, on their 2019 annual results. One of the things they talked about was specifically how they reduced their amount of flaring during startups. And what they were saying was that in 2018, they flared about 2,000 tons of CO2 during the startup. Now, what they aim to do is change that around, and through different ways, they actually reduced that down. So in 2020, they've taken that down to about 900 tons. So that's about a 48% reduction. And so as well as maximizing production, what this enables you to do is if you use these techniques we're about to show you, you can also focus at the same time on reducing down your carbon emissions. And a platform that's operating at full efficiency is not shutting down. It's a good place to be. It's maximizing production, but it's also reducing down those carbon emissions when you've got to restart the platform. I think the other good thing on the why is if you're focusing on you maximizing production, then what you're also able to do is to enhance your reputation. And that's great in this time when assets are being sold. And if you know that you're part of a team where you're actually maximizing production, it doesn't matter if you're going to get sold or where you get sold to. Everybody's going to be enthusiastic about taking you on, looking after you. You are going to be the crown in the jewel, as many people say. And so it's really important to focus on maximizing production just for the health of yourself, but also the health of the asset. Some of the things you should be looking at in terms of current performance are how visible is your current performance? How visible is production, both to the onshore team and the offshore team? Offshore, you're likely to have a much greater insight into what production's doing. But as Murray was talking about the other day, how visible is that to your chefs? They have a big part in your installation, making a difference to the crews. So how visible is it? How visible is it to people coming onto the platform, getting off? Certainly other terminals that have worked, having boards up and everything else, making it really visible is important. So test, how visible is your current performance? Do everybody understand that the role that they play in delivering it? So like the chef in Murray's previous story, are they really aware of the contribution they make towards that bigger goal? How are you communicating unplanned losses? Is that being done arbitrarily, or do you have a systematic way of doing that? And how engaged are your teams? I know that's a thing that Murray and I are really focused on, engaging people, but how engaged are they? And finally, how's performance rewarded? So are you rewarding performance well? So I know we've spent a lot of time on the what's the goal, the why, and the current performance, but if you ask those questions, that'll really set you up for success in the future. So back to Murray on some very quick how to achieve this goal.
Okay, thanks for that, Roger, and good anecdotes as always. So I guess the how to achieve, I think we've used this in probably all our videos. One is the go, see and assess. So it's actually go out there and have a look, see what's out there at the moment, and therefore what do you need to improve. Some examples of that, some specifics for the production side of things are maximum capacity charts. I was going to say, do you have them? You ought to have them. So hopefully you do have them, but are they up to date? Are they still relevant? And if they're accurate, that will also tell you a lot. And that sort of feeds into things like debottlenecking studies. So if we've got our maximum capacity charts, for those that aren't familiar with them, typically split into your 4 chokes, so reservoir, wells, plant, and export. And it actually highlights what your capacities are across these main chokes and is a very visual way of seeing where we've got any potential bottlenecks. And obviously in the life of an asset, that changes over time. So, as your reservoir stock comes down, your wells are producing a little bit less. How does that affect the rest of the system? So absolutely worth keeping up to date and keeping relevant and making sure it's shared and known throughout the teams. That leads on to things like production technical limits, really, really powerful workshops to work through this with all the teams, bring them all together. And we'll go over some of this in the full length version. But there are a few specific things like that just help us get through all the details. We'll drive into root cause and capturing our lost data and all that sort of stuff. So again, full detail will be in the longer version. So just kind of finishing off and maybe some activations, Roger, and then we'll tie this one up.
Yeah, and maybe just before going on to that, a couple of other things that we're going to show in the video. Again, on the technical side, Murray gave a good insight there into the capacity charts, production technical limits. We're also going to talk about automation and how that can add value, and also some of the behavioral things as well. So there's definitely the technical things, but also behavioral. So getting really clear on your shared vision and goals and developing that barrel chasing culture that Murray mentioned at the start. We're also going to talk about observable behaviors, what you'll see, feel, and be able to hear in the longer term video. So activations, what we'd say to you is allocate some time to go and do that, go see and assess, as Murray said. Go and see how visible is your current performance, how visible is your current production, and also check your maximum capacity chart. How recent is it? Is it fully owned by all the teams? Do they understand it? Can they communicate it to you? So just go and check that. We're here as always to help you. We'd love to hear your questions, and yeah, just really looking forward to you going and trying it. So thanks very much.